Hi everyone, this is Mr. Zhang, and today we'll be going over the math homework for Class P. This is for session U30. For number one, a box of candy contains 0.6 of a pound of caramels and 3.6 pounds of coconut. What percentage of the content of the box by weight consists of caramel? So here this is a percent problem, and a percent problem is just part over whole. So you have to identify in this word problem the part and the whole. So in this case, the caramel, this is the part, because caramels are only a part of the total box, and the total is the total weight of the box. So in this case, you want, again, part over whole, and the part is the caramel, and the total is the caramel plus the coconut. So be sure to include the caramel in the whole as well. And that will be 0.6 pounds divided by 0.6 plus 3.6, and that's equal to 0.6 over 4.2. So this turns to 6 over 42, and if you divide by 6, you get 1 over 7. So now you have to turn 1/7 into a percent to turn a fraction into a percent. First, you can turn it to a decimal, and then turn the decimal to a percent. A fraction to a decimal, you'll have to divide the numerator divided by the denominator, and then to turn the decimal to a percent, just multiply by 100%. So for this fraction 1/7, you'll have to do 1 divided by 7. And 7 goes into 10 once, and 1 times 7 is 7. 7 goes into 34 times. And there's a remainder of 2. So this will be 0.14 and 2/7, and then you move it over 2 times. This will turn into 14 and 2/7%, which is choice B. So for this problem, you have to do part over whole because it's a percent, and the key was to convert the fraction to a percent by changing it to a decimal first. Next, for number 2, you have this pie chart. You have the distribution of $100,000 of land improvement funds to 5 high schools. The circle graph above describes the distribution of $100,000 to 5 high schools for land improvement. Which high school received an amount closest to $25,000? So here, $25,000, that is the part, and $100,000 is the whole. So in this case, the part over whole in this circle graph is 25,000 over 100,000. So 3 zeros cancel out, and this is just equal to 1/4. And 1/4, you know, is 25%, and that's represented by a circle cut into 4 pieces. And that corresponds to Lincoln High School. So the answer is going to be choice B. Here you just have to estimate, and here you do know that for a circle it's 360 degrees. And 360 over 4, because there's 4 25s and 100, is equal to 90 degrees. So this has to be a 90-degree angle. Next, for number 3, if y is equal to r minus 6 and z is equal to r plus 5, which of the following is an expression representing r in terms of y and z? So you want r in terms of y and z. That means you have to isolate r and put y and z on the other side. So you know that y is equal to r minus 6 and z is equal to r plus 5. So you want to make sure that you have y and z together. You want to know what r is equal to. For example, in this case, because they're both equal to r, what you can do is isolate r from one of them and then substitute in for the other variable. Now, in this case, since you know both y and z in terms of r, what you can do is you can add y and z together. You have y is equal to r minus 6, and z is equal to r plus 5. So if you add them together, you get y plus z, and that's equal to 2r. Here, minus 6 plus 5 is equal to minus 1. So in this case, you have 2r minus 1 is equal to y plus z. Here you can add 1 to both sides. You get that y plus z plus 1 is equal to 2 times r. But you don't want 2 times r, you just want 1r. So here you could divide by 2 on both sides. And this gives you choice A. So in this case, you just substitute or you just add the two equations together. And then just isolate r. We can add the equations together because they are equal. So when you have two equal equations, you can always just add them together. Next, for number 4, you have these figures and they're not drawn to scale. So which of the following is true if the 3 polygons have equal perimeters? So the key word is perimeter here. So perimeter is equal to the distance around the shape. So to figure out the perimeter for the rectangle, you have to add 2a, 2a. Here, this is 1a plus 1a. So add it up, you have 6a. For the triangle, the perimeter will be 3b. And for the octagon, the perimeter will be 8c. So because they have equal perimeters, you know that 6a is equal to 3b is equal to 8 times c. So these are all equal here. And if you know that they're all equal, the bigger the coefficient, the smaller the variable. So in this case, c would be the shortest because you need 8 times c to be equal to the rest, whereas b would be the largest because you only need 3 of b to be equal to the biggest. So in this case, you know that b is the greatest, then c is the smallest, so a has to be in between. So the answer will have to be choice E. The other thing you can do is set the perimeter equal to the lowest common multiple. In this case, you can set it equal to 24, for example. Now, you don't know what the lengths actually are, but if you set it to 24, you'll have nice whole numbers. It would be 6 times 4 is equal to 24, which is 3 times 8. That's equal to 8 times 3. So C would be equal to 3, which is the smallest. B would be equal to 8, which is the biggest. And A would be equal to 4, which is in between. So for this one, the key was to use the definition of perimeter, which is the distance around the shape, to figure out the 3 perimeters here in terms of A, B, and C, and then just set them equal. Next, for number 5, a car travels from town A to town B in 3 hours, and then travels from B to C in 5 hours. If the distance AB is equal to the distance BC, what is the ratio of the car's average speed between A and B to its average speed for the whole distance A to C? So here we have distance, we have speed, now we also have the last variable, which is time. So the equation will be distance equals rate times time. So you know that the car from A to B travels in the time of 3 hours. And I don't know what the distance is, so you can call the distance D. And here to solve for rate, rate would be distance divided by time. So the rate will be distance over time, or d over 3. That's how fast the car is traveling. For B to C, it's the same distance, because it's equal distance. But the time here is 5 hours. So here the rate will be distance over time, or d over 5, which is a little smaller than d over 3. The bigger the denominator, the smaller the fraction. Now you want to do the ratio of the car's average speed between A and B, which is d over 3, to the average speed to AC. So here, to figure out the average speed of both parts, you have to use a formula. Because this is a weighted average, you can't just do d over 3 plus d over 5 divided by 2. The average speed is the total distance divided by the total time. And you have to do this because you don't know how long you traveled at each of the speeds. The longer you travel at a slow speed, it's going to negatively pull down the average. So for AC, the distance will be 2d, because it's d plus d. And the total time will be 3 hours plus 5 hours, or 8 hours. And 2d over 8 turns to d over 4. So your ratio is d over 3 to d over 4. And to solve for this ratio, you can turn this into a divide problem. So it's d over 3 divided by d over 4. You just have to keep change flip. So you keep d over 3, change the divide to multiply, and do the reciprocal of d over 4 to 4 over d. The variable d cancels out, and you get 4/3. So it's choice B. So this is how you would solve this problem. Again, the key is to use distance equals a times time, rearrange it for distance over time, and just set up the variables here for each part of the trip. Now, the average speed is an important formula that you need to memorize. It's total distance divided by the total time. It's a weighted average, and then you have to keep change flip when you divide fractions. Next, for number 6, given that ax is an integer and bx is an integer, which of the following must also be an integer? So integer, just a whole number, and this whole number could be negative, 0 could be positive, so it goes from negative infinity to positive infinity. And now they're both integers, so if you know that they're both integers, then here, just because they're an integer, you don't know that a and b have to be an integer. For example, a and b could be 1.5 or 2.5, and then x could be equal to 2. And if you double 1.5 or 2.5, you get 3 and 5. So ax and bx are both integers, but a and b don't have to be integers. So 1 is wrong, which means you can eliminate b and e because they have 1 in it. Now, same thing for Roman numeral number 2. X doesn't have to be an integer because you can always just swap it around. A could be 2. B could be 4. And then x could be equal to 2.5. In this case, if you multiply 2 times 2.5 and 4 times 2.5, you get a whole number. So 2 is also wrong. So you can eliminate choice D because it has 2 in it. Now 3 is always going to be an integer because if a, x, and bx are integers, you add an integer plus an integer, that's going to be an integer again. And in this case, you can factor out the x. And if you factor out the x, you get a plus b in parentheses times x, and that has to be an integer. If you had a whole number plus a whole number, it has to be another whole number. So 3 is always going to be true, so the answer has to be C. Again, for number 6, one way is to just substitute in test values. And when you substitute in test numbers, you eliminate the choices, so you just use a process of elimination. And here's a summary for this page. Next, for number 7, the rectangle CDEF has been inscribed in the right triangle ABC as shown in a figure above. If CD is equal to 3/4 of AC and CF is equal to 2/7 of BC, what's the ratio of the area of triangle ABC to the area of the rectangle CDEF? So you have a rectangle that's been inscribed or just inside this right triangle, and you know that's the length of CD, which is over here. This is 3/4 of AC. So if we call AC the height of the triangle, CD will be 3/4 of the height. And now for the base, CF is 2/7 of BC. So BC would be the base B, and CF was 2/7 of the base. So the ratio of the triangle ABC, the formula for the area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. It's going to be literally 1/2 B times H, because I call my variables B and H. And then for the rectangle, the area is length times width. So in this case, it's going to be 2/7 of B times 3/4 of h. So if you multiply everything together, you get 2/7 times 3/4 times bh. And here 2 and the 4 cross cancels, form 1 and 2. So this would be 3/14 bh. So to figure out the ratio, in case ratio means fraction or just divide. Triangle divided by the rectangle will be 1/2 bh divided by 3/14 bh. So b and h cancels out, and you end up with 1/2 divided by 3/14, which means you have to do keep change flip because you have a complex fraction within a fraction here. So you keep the 1/2, you change the divide into multiply, and you flip 3/14, so 14/3. And when you cross cancel the factor 2, they'll give you 7/3. And that's choice B. So for this question, the key was to use the area of a triangle, which is 1/2 base times height, and the area of a rectangle, which is length times width. And you just call everything in terms of the base and the height, just b and h. You can also use a random number as well. So ideally something that is a multiple of 7 for the base and a multiple of 4 for the height. Next, for number 8, the number of boys in a certain class exceeds the number of girls by 7. The number of boys is 5/4 the number of girls. How many boys are there in the class? So in this case, you have a couple of equations. In terms of boys and girls, boys is equal to the girls plus 7. So you have more boys and fewer girls. So you have to add 7 to the smaller number to be equal to the larger number, which is the boys. But you also know that boys is 5/4 of, so is means equal to, of means multiply. So boys is equal to 5/4 times girls. So you have two equations, two variables. You have this system of equations. And to solve for a system of equations, you can do substitution, which is what we're going to do, or elimination. Elimination doesn't really work here because they're not in standard form, so substitution is the best. In this case, you can take 5/4 of g and replace that with b. So instead of b, you have 5/4 of g is equal to g plus 7. And here, you can subtract g from both sides. And 5/4 of g minus 1g, or 4/4g, will be equal to 1/4 of g, is equal to just 7 on the right side. And if you multiply both sides by 4, you get that the number of girls is equal to 28. So that's for the number of girls, but what you want is how many boys are there in the class. So then you have to substitute back in to figure out that boys is equal to 5/4 times g, or g plus 7, or this equation. So that would be 28 plus 7, which is 35, or 5/4 times 28. You cross cancel, you also get 5 times 7, which is equal to 35. So the answer will be choice C. So you have to turn the word sentence to a number sentence. Exceeds means plus, is means equals to, and of equals multiply. And once you have your system of equations, you're going to use a substitution method over here to replace the variable b in terms of g, and then solve. And just make sure that you are solving for the variable that you want, which in this case is the boys. Next, for number 9. In 1989, the population of Smithdale was 900, and every year the population of Smithdale has a net increase of 100. For example, in 1990, the population of Smithdale was 1,000. In which of the following periods was the greatest percent increase in the population of Smithdale? So each year you add 100. So for example, in 1989, you have 900. Then in 1990, the population is now 1,000. 1991, it's 1,100. 1992, it's 1,200, etc. Now, even though you increase 100 every year, the percent increase is a little different. So percent increase refers to percent change, which is the formula. It's new minus old divided by old times 100%. So you have to use this formula, and you actually see that in 1989 to 1990, between the first 2 years, this is the greatest percent increase. And that's because if you add 100, the new minus the old was always going to be 100, because it's 1,000 minus 900. But the denominator is the old value, which in this case is 900. So there's a 1/9 increase. And that is the biggest because each time you increase 100, the old value, the denominator becomes bigger. This is a 1/9 increase. Then you have a 1/10 increase, then a 1/11 increase, etc. The denominator keeps getting larger because the population keeps getting bigger. So essentially you feel this increase very little each year. So the answer is going to be choice A. When the population is the lowest, an increase of 100 would mean that is the biggest change. You can also just work backwards. If the population was 100 and you add 100, then you have 200. There was a doubling. Whereas when you add 100 for 200, you go to 300, it's only a 50% increase. And then from 300 to 400, it's not a 50% increase anymore. It's only a 33.33% increase. So you keep getting a smaller and smaller percent increase because the denominator keeps getting bigger. And you want the biggest percent increase, you want the smallest denominator. So that's in the beginning, the first year. Next one, number 10, arc BE is a quarter circle with a radius of 6 and C, which is not shown, and an arbitrary point on this arc BC. Now, if AB is equal to BD is equal to AD, it's all equal to 6, then all the following possible values of the perimeter P of the quadrilateral ABCD are. So C is somewhere on here, so you want this perimeter, and you don't know where C is because it could be here, it could also be here. So it's C is somewhere along this arc. And to figure out the range of this perimeter, you want to first minimize C, and if C is really close to B here, where BC is essentially 0, that means that you essentially have a triangle, an equilateral triangle here, just 6, 6, and 6. So the minimum would be equal to 18. And you can't include 18 because that's not exactly a shape. You can't have C directly on top of point B. That would just be a triangle and not a quadrilateral. So the minimum has to be 18. It has to be greater than 18. So A is wrong because it can't be equal to 18. And B is wrong because the minimum here is 12. So you want to make sure that P is greater than 18. And then to figure out the maximum, you want to make C really close and really far away from D. And also from B, and that distance is over here. If you make C directly on point E, which is possible, if C and E are at the same point, then you would have the biggest perimeter here. You have 6 plus 6 plus 6, which is 18, and then you have to add this distance BC, and this is a special right triangle. Specifically, it's a 45, 45, 90 right triangle in which the sides are in the ratio of x, x, and x root 2. So this distance will be 6 root 2. So the maximum will be 18 plus 6 root 2, and this is possible if C was equal to E, and it's far from B. So that would be choice D as the answer. So P would be between 18 and 18 plus 6 root 2. So the key to this problem is this 45, 45, 90 special right triangle, and just minimizing and maximizing this shape. And here's a summary for this page. Next, for question number 1, you need to find the value of 20 plus 30 plus 10 plus 40 plus 25 plus 25 in parentheses divided by 3. So here you have to do the order of operations, which is, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, so it's parentheses. And you have to do these parentheses first. So that's going to be 20 plus 30, or 50, plus 10 plus 40, which is another 50, plus 25 plus 25, which is another 50. And this is divided by 3. And you don't see any exponents. And now, you do see multiply and divide, but the numerator, there's also parentheses that you have to finish the numerator first. So in this case, you have to do the numerator before you multiply and divide, because we do see a fraction bar. So this will be 150 over 3, or just 50. That's choice D. Next, for number 2, a piece of rope is lying on a number line. One of its ends is at the coordinate -4, and the other is at coordinate 7. What's the length of the rope? So here, you just draw a number line. So one end is at -4, and the other end is at 7. So if you just count forward, you can do 7 minus -4, which is 11, choice E. You can also count from 7 to 0, because the distance from 0 to 7 is just 7. And then from 0 to -4, it's a length of 4. And you have to do the absolute value here, because you're doing length, which is always positive. Next, for number 3, a long jumper has jumps of 8.4 meters, 8.1 meters, and 9.3 meters. What's the average or arithmetic mean of these jumps? So the key word here is average, and an average or mean means you got to do the total sum, and they have to divide it by the number of data. So in this case, the total sum will be 8.4 plus 8.1 plus 9.3, and that would be an 8 in the tens place. And then 8 and 8 is 16. 16 plus 9 is 25. So the total is 25.8 meters. Then you have to divide 25.8 divided by 3, because you have 3 jumps. So when you divide by 3, 3 goes into 25 8 times. Bring down the 8, and 3 goes to 18 6 times. Move the decimal here. So the average in this case will be 8.6 meters, and that's choice B. Next, for number 4, if x plus 9 is equal to -11 minus x, then x is equal to. So here you have x on both sides, so you have to isolate x. That's the goal. You have to isolate x by using converse operations. So put x on one side, collect and put all the x values on one side, and then put all the constants on the other side. Again, using inverse operations. So here you can add x first. And when you do that, you have x plus x, or 2x on the left, plus 9 is equal to -11. Then you can subtract 9 from both sides to move the constants to the right. And that way you isolate the x on the left, and -11 minus 9 is -20. Now for the last step, to isolate x, you have to recognize that there's an invisible multiply here. So you have to divide by 2. And that tells you x is equal to -10, which is choice A. Now, you should always check your work to see if x is equal to negative 10. So when you substitute in negative 10 for x, instead of x plus 9, you have negative 10 plus 9, which is equal to negative 1. I want to see if that's equal to negative 11 minus negative 10. Or negative 11 minus 10, which is equal to negative 11 plus 10, which is also equal to negative 1. So they're both equal, so that means that x is in fact equal to negative 10. Next one, number 5, if 3y is equal to 12 and 10 divided by x is equal to 5, then y plus 11 divided by x plus 15 is equal to. So here you want to solve for x and you want to solve for y in both of these equations. Here you can divide by 3 to figure out that y is equal to 4. And for the right, you can do a swap. You can just flip-flop the x and the 5 to figure out that x is equal to 10 over 5, which is 2. The reason why you can do that is you are essentially cross-multiplying. So to cross-multiply here, because you have 5, which is 5 over 1, this is 10 is equal to 5x, and then if you divide by 5, you kind of swap the x and the 5 when you cross-multiply and solve. That gives you x is equal to 2. So if y is equal to 4, then you substitute in. And same for the x. So instead of y plus 11, you have 4 plus 11 in the numerator. In the denominator, instead of x plus 15, you have 2 plus 15. And that's equal to 15 over 17. And that's choice C. Next, for number 6, Johnny deposited $50 in a savings bank at the beginning of the year. Johnny's money earns him interest at the rate of 8% of the amount he deposited for each year that Johnny leaves his money in the bank. If Johnny leaves his $50 in the bank for exactly 1 year and then decides to withdraw all his money, how much money, including the interest, can he withdraw? So the interest is not compounded. So here, this is a simple interest question. Again, the key word here is interest. And interest is just the extra money the borrower pays the lender. So if you borrow money, you have to pay the lender, the person who gave you the money, some extra money after some time. So in this case, when you put money in the bank is actually the borrower and you are the lender. So you're lending the bank this money and the bank can, invest it and do stuff with it. But the bank will give you some extra money in return. In this case, it's the 8%. So what happens is you put in $50 and you want to calculate the interest. Well, interest is equal to P times R times T. So I is interest. Again, this is the extra money. P stands for the principal. And this is the starting money. R is the interest rate. And it's always in a decimal. And T is the time. And it's always in years. If it's not compounded. So compounded means that it keeps being multiplied every single day. And that's not the situation here. So here, you just have to identify the variables. P, the principal, is $50. The interest rate is 8%, or 0.08. Be careful, it's not 0.8, because that's 80%. It's 0.08, because it's only 8%. And T is just 1 year. So essentially, you have to multiply everything. So I will be 50 times 0.08 times 1. And when you solve for this, you just have 50 times 0.08, which is equal to 4. Because 50 times 8 is 400, and you have to move the decimal back 2 times. So just get that the interest is equal to $4. Now this is the extra money, so you have to add this because you decided to withdraw all of it. Add this to the original. So you have 50 plus $4 or $54. And that's choice C. So key here is to use this formula, I equals PRT. Now to help you solve for the interest. Next for number 7, if parentheses x plus x squared is equal to 12x plus 72, then x is equal to. So here we have to expand this by foiling. So this is a double distribution. Or FOIL. So when you have x plus 6 squared or x plus 6 times itself, you essentially use the distributive property twice. So you distribute the x across x and 6. That's the first and outer terms. Then you also want to distribute the inner and the outer, inner and last terms. So for the first term, it's x times x, or x squared. The outer term is x times positive 6, which will include a sign, it's plus 6x. Inner term is x times x, which is, 6 times x, which is plus 6x. And last is plus 6 times positive 6, which is positive 36. And from here, you have to combine like terms. The 6x and 6x combine to form 12x. And that's how you FOIL or do double distribution. And that's equal to 12x plus 72. So from here, you can just solve for x by simplifying. You can first subtract 12x and subtract, just subtract 12x first. Get x squared plus 36 is equal to 72. And here you can actually do the shortcut, subtract 36 on both sides. You just get that x squared is equal to 36. Now, x can actually be two answers here, because that's what this exponent of 2 tells us. This exponent of 2 is called a degree, which means there are, at most, 2 answers. And that's because when you have x squared is equal to 36, x could be equal to the positive square root of 36 or the negative square root of 36. So x could be 6 or negative 6. So there are 2 answers here. Choice D, plus or minus 6, because positive 6 squared is 36. Negative 6 in parentheses squared is also 36. So you have to be careful here. The other way to actually solve this, it's actually subtract 36 and move it to the left. So you get x squared minus 36 is equal to 0. This is your difference of 2 squares factoring pattern. So this becomes x plus 6 times x minus 6 is equal to 0. And this will give you x is 6 or negative 6 when you factor and solve. So for number 7, the key is to do the double distribution. And then just be careful, when you end up here, you have 2 potential answers. You can also use the difference of 2 squares factoring pattern to solve for that. Which is a squared minus b squared is equal to a plus b times a minus b. That's a factoring pattern that you need to memorize. So here you have this diagram. Again, the figures not drawn to scale. In the circle above, A is the center of the circle. Now you have to find the value of x minus 60. So to find this value, one thing to keep in mind is that x and 60 has to be equal to 360 because a full circle is 360 degrees. So if you subtract 60 on both sides, figure out that x has to be equal to 300. So if x is 300, that's not the answer though, because we want x minus 60. So that'll be 300 minus 60, which is equal to 240. So that's going to be choice B. The key here is to figuring out that x plus 60 is 360 degrees, because both of these make up a full circle. Next, for number 9, to the nearest 100, how many minutes are there in a week? So to figure out the number of minutes in a week, you know that 1 week is equal to 7 days. But 1 day is equal to 24 hours. So you have to do 7 times 24 to figure out the number of hours there. That's equal to 168 hours. And you know that 1 hour is equal to 60 minutes. So you have to multiply by 60. So 168 you have to multiply by 60. Or you could just multiply by 6 and then just add the 0 at the end. So 8 times 6 is 48. This is 36 plus 40, which is 36 plus 4, which is 40. So you have 10,080 hours. Now when you round this number to the nearest hundreds, look at the hundreds place, and then you have to look at it to the right. And this is the 8, which is 5 plus. It's more than 5, so it tells you to round up. Turn the hundreds into a ones place, into a 1, and then you get 10,100, choice D. So here's a summary for this page. Next one, number 10, if triangle x is defined by the equation triangle x is equal to x cubed divided by 4 for real numbers x, which of the following is equal to 16? So this is your function notation. And your function is just an input-output machine. And it's essentially a rule that you have to follow. So you have to substitute in all these numbers. The rule here is to cube the number. And then step 2, divide by 4. Because you have this fraction bar. So for choice A, it's 2 being substituted in. This would be 2 cubed divided by 4. And 2 cubed is 2 times 2 times 2, or 8 over 4. That's equal to 2. That's not equal to 16, so that's wrong. For choice B, you have 4 cubed divided by 4. And 4 cubed is 64. And when you do 64 divided by 4, you get 16. So that's the answer, choice B. And should also check the other choices. So for choice C, you would have to substitute 8 cubed divided by 4. That's 8 times 8 times 8 over 4, which is 64 times 2, or 128. So you can see that as the numbers get bigger, they're going to be greater than 128. So it's going to be further and further away from 16. So these are definitely incorrect. And the key is a function here. You just have to read the rule here using order of operations, and then just substitute it. Next one, number 11. 200 pieces of candy have been randomly put into 5 jars. The number of pieces of candy in 3 of the 5 jars is shown in the figure above. What's the maximum value of x, where x is the number of pieces of candy in the 4th jar? So to maximize x, we have to minimize y. So the smallest number that you can put in one jar is just 1. So you can subtract that from the total, which is 200. So you have 42 in the first, 27, then 56. So if you add these up, you have 125. So you can have 200 subtract 125. That's equal to 75. So actually in this case, you don't have to put 1 in the x. In y, this could be 0. So no candy in this one. So that means that x will have all 75. Choice B. Next one, number 12. There are 16 pages in a book, and last night Ron read 1/4 of the book. This morning he read 1/4 of the remaining pages. How many pages does Ron still have left to read? So here you have 16 pages total. And first he reads, or 1/4 of the book. So 1/4 of 16 is equal to 4. So that means that 3/4 is remaining. So he has 12 pages remain. Now, this morning he reads another 1/4. So that would be 1/4 of 12, which is equal to 3. So he reads 3 pages. And if you do 12 minus 9, that would be equal to, or 12 minus 3 rather, that would be equal to 9 pages that are unread. And that's choice C. So again, it's 1/4 of the remaining pages. So the remaining is not 16, it's 12, because you have 12 pages left. Next for number 13, a sphere is inscribed in a cube whose volume is 64. What's the diameter of the sphere? So you have a sphere, and it's inscribed in a cube. So that means it's inside this cube. So a sphere is perfectly inside it. And the key here is to figure out that for this sphere that is inside this cube, for this sphere, it has a diameter that is equal. This diameter is equal to the edge of the cube. That's because if you look at this from the front, this cube will just look like a perfect square, and the sphere will be a circle inside. So the diameter here will be equal to 8, because the side of the square is, or rather 4, because the side is equal to 4. The volume is 64, and the volume of a cube is side cubed, and that's equal to 64. You have the side is equal to 4. So if the side is equal to 4, then the diameter is also equal to choice E, 4. Next for number 14, the ratio of girls to boys in a class is 8:7. The number of students in a class could be any of the following except. So the 8:7, these represent parts. So if the girls to boys represents these, it's represented by these parts, that means that if you take the two parts, you add them together, 8 plus 7 will be equal to 15 parts. And because you can have a fraction of a person, that means that the total must be a multiple of 15. It has to be in the 15 times table. And it turns out that A is in the 15 times table, so is B. C isn't. C is the only one that is not in the 15 times table, so that cannot be possible. You'll end up with a fraction of a person, which can't happen. Next one, number 15. If m divided by n is equal to x over m, then x is equal to. So here you have two fractions, or proportion. What you want to do is cross multiply. So when you cross multiply, you get m times m, or m squared, is equal to nx. And now you want to isolate x, so you're going to have to divide by n, and you get choice A. Next one, number 16. The above figure is an equilateral triangle divided into 4 congruent, smaller equilateral triangles. So that's shown in the diagram above. If the perimeter of the smaller triangle is 1, then the perimeter of the whole larger triangle is. So the smaller triangle, the perimeter equal to 1, and for equilateral triangles, all sides are equal. So what that means is each side is going to be equal to 1/3. So if each one's equal to 1/3, if you add everything together, you have 2/3 plus 2/3 plus 2/3, or equal to 6. Because if you have 6 times 1/3, that's equal to 6 over 3, or just equal to 2. So you have 6/3 or 2, choice A. Next one, number 17. A different candle was lit at noon each day between December 9th and December 21st inclusive. How many candles were lit during this period? So inclusive means it includes both endpoints. And this is important because if you, for example, just do 12:9 to 12:11, here, if you do 11 minus 9, you get 2. You think it's 2 candles, but it's actually 3 candles because you have to add one of the endpoints. When you do 11 minus 9, you only count the 2 jumps. So you don't count the first jump, but here, if it's inclusive, you also have to count the jump. So between 12:9 and 12:11, you have 3 candles. So you do 11 minus 9, and you have to add 1. That 1, it includes the first day, or the first starting point. So here when you do 12:9 to 12:21, 21 minus 9 is equal to 12. But it's not 12 candles. You have to add 1 for the endpoint. So that's actually a total of choice D, 13 candles. So what you can do is you can model the problem using smaller numbers. And then you can apply a rule and then apply it to the original problem. So here's a summary for this page. Next for number 18, what is the area of the quadrilateral ABCO in the figure above? So the key is to figure out that this quadrilateral is in fact a trapezoid. And the area of a trapezoid is given by the equation 1/2 base 1 plus base 2 times the height. So you want to do the average of the 2 bases and multiply by the height. Here, a trapezoid has exactly 1 pair of parallel sides. And that pair of parallel sides are the bases. So base 1 will be up here. The distance from 0,3 to 4,3 is really from 0 to 4. So base 1 will be 4 minus 0, which is just 4. Base 2 is on the bottom here, which is from 0,0 to this point. And you don't know what that point is, so you have to find out what this portion, what this right portion, this triangular portion of this triangle is. Well, here, if you drop the height down, you know that this is a 90-degree right angle because you made a rectangle here. So this is going to be a 45, 45, 90 right triangle. If this side is, this angle is 45 degrees, the other angle is also 45 degrees. And the ratio is going to be in a ratio of x, and x root 2. So to drop this height down, you can figure out at this point, but it's same for the same x as point B, but it's on the x-axis, so it's 4,0. And that means that this height will be 3. So that means that the base here is also 3. So if you take this 4, which is the bottom part of the rectangle, plus this 3, which is the bottom part of this right triangle, point C will be 7,0, which will give you base 2 as 7. So you have base 1 is equal to 4, base 2 is equal to 7, and the height is equal to 3. So put everything together, you get 1/2 4 plus 7 times 3, or 1/2 11 times 3, which is really 33 over 2, or 16.5, which is choice C. So for this question, you have to use the area of a trapezoid formula, as well as a 45, 45, 90 right triangle to figure out the coordinates, the measurements of the bases. Next one, number 19. The difference between the sum of 2 numbers and the difference of the 2 numbers is 6. Find the larger of the 2 numbers if the product is 15. So you know that the 2 numbers product, which is being multiplied, is 15. So if you look at the choices, if you have the first number, then the second number, you can just do 15 divided by the choice. So if the first number is 3, the second number has to be 5. And that doesn't work because the second number has to be larger. So next you have 5 and that means 3. So 5 is larger than 3, which means that this could be it. For choice C, it's 17, so this would be 15 over 17. Then you have 20 over 17, 15 over 20, and then 15 over 23. Now each of these has choice that's larger, so that's good. Now again, we eliminate choice A because 5 is larger than 3. You don't want that. Again, you're looking for the larger number. So if you have the list of two numbers here, and what you want to do is find the difference between the sum of the two numbers and the difference of the two numbers. And the first one that you want to try is 5 and 3 because they're whole numbers. The other ones are fractions, so the sum and difference will be some fractions. So the sum of 5 and 3 will be 8. The difference will be 5 minus 3, which is 2. And here you see that this is exactly the difference of 6, which is what you want. So the answer has to be choice B. For choice C, it's not going to work. If you try 17 plus 15 over 17, which is 17 minus 15 over 17, here you have a difference of just 2 times 15 over 17, or 30 over 17. So that's less than 2, so that's not going to work. And same for the rest. So the answer has to be choice B. Next for number 20, if 1 over A plus 1 over B is equal to 10, what's the value of A plus B? So here we have one equation and we have two variables. So that means that we can't really find what each of them are individually, but maybe there's a way to find the sum. So here, if you add the two fractions, you know the LCD is A times B. So if you have 1 over A, you'll multiply that by B over B. And then for 1 over B, you'll multiply that by A over A, which is just a form of 1. And that will give you B over AB plus A over BA is equal to 10. And then you can multiply by AB on both sides. You get that once you distribute, you get A plus B, which is what you want, but that's equal to 10 times AB, which, again, I don't know what A times B is equal to. There can be a lot of potential answers here, so the answer is choice E. There's no way that you can figure this out. So, for example, you can have 1 over 0.2 plus 1 over 0.2. That's equal to 10. But you can also have 1 over 0.5, which is equal to 2. And then you can have a form of 8 by doing 1 over 1/8. So 1 over 0.125. That's equal to 2 plus 8, which is also equal to 10. So just an infinite number of answers here. So we can't solve for A and B. It could A plus B. It could be equal to a variety of numbers. Next one, number 21. In the figure above, you have this shape. It's a regular dodecagon, which is a regular 12-sided polygon. The curved path is made up of 12 semicircles, each of whose diameter is a side of the dodecagon. The perimeter of the dodecagon is 24. What's the area of the shaded region? So because it's a regular shape, that means that all sides are congruent and all the angles are congruent as well. And we could use the fact that all sides are congruent. If the perimeter is 24, you can do 24 divided by 12 because you have 12 sides. That's equal to 2. That means for each of these semicircles, the side is equal to 2. That corresponds with the diameter of the circle or the semicircle. So if you look at these semicircles, you have 12 semicircles. It really means you have 6 full circles. If you want to find the area of 6 full circles, where the area is pi r squared. So if you take 2 of these and you put them together, you get a full circle, which diameter is equal to 2, which means that the radius is just equal to 1. Because the diameter is 2 times the radius. So the radius is equal to 1. Then you can substitute in for the area, which will be pi r squared, or pi times 1 squared, or just pi. And because you have 6 circles, that'll be 6 times pi as a total area. And that's choice A. So for this question, you have to use the area of a circle and just use the fact that you have a regular polygon. Next to number 22, if x is greater than 0 and y is greater than 0, and x to the 9th is equal to 4 and x to the 7th is equal to 9 over y squared, which of the following is an expression for the value of x in terms of y? So here you want to have x and replace in terms of y. So that means you have to isolate x. And to do so, if you have x to the 9th here and you have x to the 7th, you can use the laws of exponents to multiply both sides by x squared. Because if you have 2 exponents and you're multiplying them, you have to add the exponents themselves. So b to the a times b to the c is b to the a times a plus c. So this would be x to the 2 plus 7, or x to the 9th, and that's equal to x squared over y squared times 9. Let me rewrite that. That's essentially 9x squared over y squared. But we know that this is equal to x to the 9th is equal to 4. So you know that 9x squared divided by y squared is equal to 4. So now you want to get x by itself. To do so, you can get rid of the denominator by multiplying both sides by y squared. That leaves you with 9x squared is equal to 4y squared. You can divide by 9 on both sides, and you'll get that x squared is equal to 4y squared over 9. And to solve for x, you'll have to do the square root. And when you do a square root of a over b, you do square root of a divided by the square root of b. You take the square root of everything inside this fraction. The square root of 4y squared divided by the square root of 9. Now, every single thing in here is actually a perfect square. The square root of 4 is just 2. The square root of y squared is just y. And the square root of 9 is 3. So you get 2/3 y, which is equal to x. And that's choice B. So you have to use this rule of this law of exponent. When you multiply 2 exponents of the same base, you have to add the exponents. And if you do a square root of a fraction, you take the square root of the numerator and the square root of the denominator. Next one, number 23, Bobby had B marbles and Charlie had C marbles. After Bobby gave 6 marbles to Charlie, Bobby still had 18 more marbles than Charlie. You want to find C minus B. So Bobby has B marbles, Charlie had C, and now Bobby gave 6 marbles to Charlie. So that means you have B minus 6 for Bobby, and Charlie will add 6. But even so, this number, Bobby, still has 18 more marbles than Charlie. So if you take the smaller number, C, plus 6, and you add 18, that will be equal to B minus 6. So that's what this equation is telling me here. And now to solve for this, you can combine like terms. You get C plus 24, that's equal to B minus 6. And now you want to find C minus B, so you can subtract 24 on both sides. You get that B minus 30 is equal to C, and then you want to subtract B from both sides. And you get negative 30 is equal to C minus B. So the answer is choice E here. Next one, number 24. PM and PN are tangent to the circle at M and N respectively, and angle MON is 120, and OM is equal to ON, and that's equal to 5. I want to find the perimeter of the shaded region. So first, you have this shape. You can draw P to O, and that will actually cut the shape in half. And when you do so, when you have this point of tangency, your tangent to a circle, it means it makes a right angle to the radius. And that's going to be important because you made two right triangles here. And once you have that, you can then try to solve for this triangle. So when you have this right triangle, you know that MON is 120 degrees. That gets split into 60 degrees, and which means the top has to be 30 degrees. So it's two 30, 60, 90 right triangles that you just made. And the ratios of the sides are x to x and x root 3. So you have 5, this would be 10 across a 90, and this would be 5 root 3. So you know you have to add the 5 root 3's together. So you have 5 root 3 plus 5 root 3, which is 10 root 3. So you know it has to be one of these choices. So A, B, and C will be wrong. And now you just have to get this arc. Now to get this arc is a piece of the circumference. The circumference is 2 pi r, which is equal to 2 times pi times 5, or 10 pi. And now because this is 120 degrees, 120 over the full circle, which is 360 degrees, is 1/3. So this arc is 1/3 of their circumference, or 1/3 of 10 pi, which is equal to 10 pi over 3. And that's here, so the answer is going to be choice D. So for this question, we have to use a 30, 60, 90 right triangle and the definition of tangency to help us solve the perimeter. Next one, number 25. When Stanley received 10x tapes, he had 5y plus 1 times as many tapes as he originally had. In terms of x and y, how many tapes did Stanley have originally? So you don't know how many he had, so let's call it A. Now, when you receive 10x tapes, so A plus 10x, this number is 5y plus 1 times more. So that means that 5y plus 1 times, again, times means multiply, the original A is equal to A plus 10x. So you just want to solve for A in this case. So you can do so by distributing. You get A times 5y, or rather 5ay plus A is equal to A plus 10x. So here you want to subtract A from both sides to get rid of A. And you have 5ay is equal to 10x. You want to get A by itself, so you want to divide by 5y on both sides, and you get that A has to be equal to 10 over 5, which is 2 times, that should be a y, x over y. So it's choice E, 2x over y. The other thing you can do here to solve is to just substitute the numbers. So pretend he had 10 tapes, and then he got, 10x more, and then just work your way from there. All right, and here is the summary for this last page. Thank you, everyone, for joining me today. Enjoy the rest of the day, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. All right, bye, everyone.